Welcome to this month's Wyecliffe In-Conversation. My name's Ben. I've been selling artwork in galleries for like 28 years. So I've got quite a lot of experience about what people buy, why they buy. This particular podcast is about top tips for art collecting and common mistakes to avoid. I'm with my colleague here, Katia.
Hi, great to see you guys again. Thanks for following along. I haven't got quite as much experience, but I studied fine art at Central St Martin's for 4 years, and I've been in the gallery industry for 17 years now, I think. So between us, we've got hopefully a wealth of knowledge that we can share with you, along with our top 13 tips. And it sounds kind of negative about common mistakes, but there are some things that we've seen in terms of kind of where we've been trying to advise collectors and perhaps they haven't necessarily followed and perhaps have made a mistake along the way. So we want to share those as well.
I think it's a lot of people when it comes to buying art, they haven't bought art before, they haven't started a collection. So hopefully people will watch this podcast and avoid the mistakes that a lot of people do make.
Absolutely.
So where do we start?
So I think we're going to start with tip number 1 that we have. And it sounds very basic, but it is start with what you love. And I think that this is a journey of exploration for a lot of people, isn't it, really? So you have to spend a little bit of time actually just going out there and experiencing art. Go to art fairs, go to galleries, take a look online, look on Instagram, look on your socials, and just keep looking and finding what you keep coming back to. Because obviously art as the idea of it is it has longevity in your home, and you're going to be looking at that piece of work for a long time. So you need to kind of understand what makes you tick and what you're going to get the value out of. That in 5-10 years, you're still going to get that real appreciation out of the piece rather than being something that's a bit faddy.
And it's so easy to do now with art galleries generally having their catalogue online. I remember when we first started doing a website, it took forever for the images to load and the photography wasn't good. Whereas now, high res almost instantly, you get great shots. I really like showing the piece both framed and we generally put one of our team next to, so you can see the scale of the painting. That's very important. Also makes it more real as well. You can search for art both in galleries and online and start to get an understanding of what you like, what you don't like about art.
Yeah, and you don't need any knowledge for that, because that's something that we hear a lot, that you don't know anything, or a person walks into the gallery, I don't know anything about the artwork, and then you kind of feel a bit kind of under pressure, and you don't need to. You just need to have a little bit of time to start understanding kind of what makes you tick almost. Yeah,
definitely. No, I think that's true. I think it always starts what you love. You have, well, hopefully be hanging in your home. A lot of people have collections which they store, which is fine. But it's always best to hang the art in your home and buy something that you're always going to enjoy. And the art in your home makes such a difference in feeling to the home as well, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. Tip number 2, measure your space. I feel like that one sounds like a bit of a basic one, but at the same time, actually having a really correct understanding of the proportion of your wall space, or even if it's a sculpture, kind of like the scale of your coffee table, is going to be very important to the process of the art selection. Because when you go out there, you can have a look at the scale of the painting or the addition, wall sculpture that you happen to be looking at. And hopefully you'll be able to visualize the space that's going to be left around it, because you buy too small and you leave a lot of space around the artwork, and suddenly your wall space is the thing that people are looking at and not the art. Likewise, you go too big, it can over dominate and it feels kind of cramped. So getting that balance in that between the two is really quite important.
It's definitely, go with measurements to galleries, know what you've got. Also go for photograph your space as well. We have a marketing team that can superimpose different artworks onto your wall space that helps you visualize the overall size in your home, which is really useful. But we've got stories of people that have bought paintings that won't physically fit in their home. We had a 4 meter by 4 meter painting commission produced by someone, and we got to the house and it just wasn't getting in through the doors. The wall was big enough, but the door wasn't. So we've craned artwork into people's homes. In London, we've had to get permits for cranes to block roads. Lots of things are possible, but yeah, go with your measurements. Know what you want. Another short tip about that is when people buy a TV, when they first get it home, it feels too big because it's new. It's only filling the wall. So don't be scared if you get a piece of artwork home and you think, oh, is it too big? Because after a couple of weeks, it won't be. It will generally be fine. But like you say, don't go too crazy and fill the space too much. But it needs to breathe. But don't be afraid to scale.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more actually on that point. Being a bit bold can often pay off, but just within its limits, leave a couple of centimeters either side if you need to. Tip number 3: consider the artwork's impact. So when we say that, what we mean is consider what you're trying to achieve with that artwork. How is it going to be viewed? Are yourself, your family, your guests, your home, is it in a transitional space like a hallway? In which case they're not actually ever going to be stood or sat just simply looking at it. Is it going to be in a dining space where potentially it's going to be sparking conversation, so you might want something with a bit of interest, a bit of detail in it? Is it going to be in a bit of a more intimate area, somewhere like a downstairs WC? So in which case you might want something that, again, your guest, yourself, might can take the time to look at. So there's different paces of artwork, and I think that they can change the pace and the movement and the kind of the dynamic feel of your space as well when you consider how they're going to be seen and what purpose they're going to have.
Yeah, I think you covered that perfectly. I'd also say if you've got young children, be careful about height, particularly if it's glazed artworks. We can generally use perspex instead of glass, which gives the protection if children fall against it, or graded teenagers or whatever. So do think about glass glazing and protecting the artwork.
Yeah, on that note, some installers will be able to lock your artwork to the wall to avoid children, because I've actually got this with my toddler at the moment. She is absolutely desperately trying to climb onto things to get to the artwork that we've got on our walls, and she actually the other day managed to get one of them swinging, because we don't have it locked. So locking artwork, if you do have young kids, is a very good idea.
Yeah, it's quite a simple process. You can even do it yourself if you're good at DIY, but if not, get someone to just lock one corner for you.
Yeah. And then tip number 4, consider the lighting of your artwork. And now I always feel like this is something really important when we're having a conversation with our client, which is, obviously we're very lucky in the gallery to have lots of spotlights, but we are a designated art viewing space. And so perhaps clients do not have that at home, so they need to really consider where the lighting source is going to be for their painting or their sculpture as well. It can be quite easy to install kind of angled spotlights, but do consider what you already have there, because the beautiful, even the artworks behind us as an example, obviously you've got a multi-layered resin piece which is singing under a couple of spotlights, but as soon as you remove that away, they will feel a little bit darker as a consequence of it. So it's important to consider how you're going to light. Lighting
is really important, particularly reflection as well. There's lots of clients' homes where the art looks amazing in the evening, but during the day when the natural light comes in, you can't see what's going on. If it's glazed, we can use a high-end glass, non-reflective glass. And in the old days, it used to be dull in the picture. Now we have the advancements in glass is crazy. So you actually get glass which is non-reflective. You can feel the glass is there. It's fantastic. And it also protects the art from UV as well, from fading. So if it's glazed, you can go for a higher-end glass. But just generally, I think a lot of our clients, when we go to the homes of artwork, they say, "Oh, what do we do about lighting?" And they already have downlights, but they're not angled. So just change them to an angled downlight, which costs barely anything, and suddenly you create a spot. And also changing the actual bulb in the light, so it creates a more spot. So it's a more piercing, and even the light balance of the light is very, very good. If you go more daylight on the white balance, it can really lift the artwork. But a good gallery will show you how your art looks under different conditions, and it'll give you an idea of what to go for. And for the price of buying a few bulbs and testing it at home, it's well worth getting it to the way you want it to be.
Couldn't agree more. So number 5, set your budget. Decide on what you're comfortable spending. Now, this is really important, because if you're going out there with to buy a piece of artwork, it's obviously a considered purchase, and you are going to have it for many years. You've already mentioned, I think, earlier on in this podcast about, the purchase of a television and the scale of it. I always think when you buy a telly, you're probably really happy to spend hundreds, if not thousands, on that TV, in the full knowledge that in 4 years' time, 3 years' time, you're probably going to replace that TV for something of a very equivalent sum. Whereas with a painting, ideally, you're not going to be replacing the artwork. You might rotate it to a different location in your home or your new home, which we'll cover a little bit later in one of our other tips. But at the same time, investing in that painting it's a really strong strategy, because obviously it's your home environment, but you do need to know what you can afford. And it's also important when you're looking around and thinking about what you want to spend. Obviously, there are different tiers. You've got originals and limited editions, but also you want to be talking to the gallery about what payment options that they offer. Obviously, we ourselves have various payment options. You can pay outright for it, but interest-free credit is a great way of collecting artwork, and you can do that over a 12-month period. And it sort of means that actually by the end of your 12 months, you've got your first painting. You can then roll into your second, actually build a really solid collection using that as a mechanism.
Yeah, I think interest-free credit is literally changed the way people buy art, and it's fantastic, like you say. And on the more expensive items, you can go even longer than the 12 months. What I will say with some art galleries is if you go into an art gallery with a particular budget in mind, it's okay to think, actually, do you know what, I'm going to treat myself and go a bit more, but don't allow the gallery to bully you into going somewhere where you're uncomfortable. And it's a bit like when you're in a restaurant and you say, oh, I quite like this one, and they say, oh no, you want to go for this one, and they go for a much more expensive one. So a good gallery will understand where you are with your finance, what you want to invest in a piece of art, and help you at that level. And maybe slightly less, maybe slightly more, but there are lots of galleries that just try and bully you out of spending more than you're comfortable with. You don't want to be looking at a painting thinking, oh, I spent so much on that. You want to be looking at painting you love, which is at a comfortable level. But interest-free credit allows you to have a greater, more comfortable level.
Yeah, completely. I think the other thing within this, I would say, is expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. Obviously, one of our ethoses is hopefully entry level and affordable quality artwork. Obviously, that can mean different things to different people. But at the same time, hopefully the artists that you're looking at will have different price points depending on what you're looking at. So you have limited editions, which I already mentioned, maybe at £200-300. Then you might be looking at their originals, 1,000, 2,000, and then upwards from there. But at the very least, there should be a way for you to start collecting at that entry price point, particularly when you're talking about emerging artists.
And also artwork is prices. Just like anything else, it's demand. It's economies of scale, demand. And with artwork, if you can see an artist is selling consistently at a certain level, then that gives you the understanding that that's the true value of that artwork. Be very, very cautious about an artist we can't see a sales history, can't see them selling that well, and suddenly you see a limited edition at a very, very high price, or a small original at a very, very high price. You've got to be cautious that you're not just overpaying for that work. So it's always good to have a chat to the gallery and say, so how long has the artist been selling at this level? How many paintings? Many of our artists, the original sell before we even get them. And we're always quite loath to, or the artists are generally quite loath to increase the price, because it's their job. They're producing art. They love to produce art, and it sells, and everyone's happy. If they increase their price too much, suddenly things stop selling. And of course, an artist doesn't want a studio full of art. So it's getting that right level. And the gallery, basically, you can ask some awkward questions to the gallery to find out that item is worth that what they're asking you to pay.
Yeah. Right, number 6. This is about, our tip is to ask about framing and maintenance of the artwork that you're purchasing, particularly these days where you've got contemporary artists trialing new different kinds of techniques, new kinds of materials. They may come along with a kind of a care package, which is always good to know about, and the method, even just of cleaning them. So I'll try and break that apart a little bit. Obviously, the framing itself is important from the choice. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're picking something that goes with both the art and your home. If you're getting a painting that is already with a frame, chances are the artist or the gallery has picked that frame because they feel that is the best combination to bring out the strongest elements of the art that you're looking at. Some of those can have quirks and nuances like the patina effect. Some of them are very high gloss. But actually caring for those frames is part of, I guess, the upkeep of the artwork. So the recommendation in terms of frames is just kind of a dry cloth to wipe over. And you can also buy air canisters from like Amazon, can't you, where you can just literally blow the dust away. So you don't really want to be using any sort of cleaning product or material actually on that frame, because you can actually, and of course the artwork itself, you don't really want to be placing anything on there that can affect it over time, that sits on the surface and can ultimately change it, is what we're saying to avoid.
Yeah, microfiber cloths are great because obviously they pick up the static and pick up. So it should be very simple for you to maintain and keep your artwork. If you have an oil painting and it discolors over time, you can get the varnish chain removed and revarnished. It's not that expensive to do that. You can get them professionally cleaned. But an artwork shouldn't really, a normal environment shouldn't really need to start to be clean for 10, 12, 15 years. But that's always an option for you. Reframing artworks as well. People change the interior design, they want to change the frame to the artwork, that's absolutely fine. I would say if you go into an art gallery and you see a painting in the frame, the gallery will probably try and want you to buy it in the frame that it's in, because obviously they framed it, so it's cheaper for them. Have to reframe it. Maybe they charge you, maybe they don't, but they still would rather you buy it in the frame that's in. So just be wary of that frame actually suiting your home as well. Don't feel bullied into buying it because the gallery said you should have that one. If they say it's the artist's choice, have a look at the artist's collection to make sure that is the frame that the artist uses and the artist regularly sells. If it is, that probably makes sense, but just be a little bit cautious and make sure that frame suits you.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing to say about it, if it is the artist's signature frame and you do opt to change it, obviously, if you ever think in the future, which hopefully you won't because you'll love it for your lifetime, but if you do think in the future you might want to change it, that might be a hurdle to the resale of your artwork because it's not in the signature frame. Yeah,
it's very true. And obviously, like I say, if you see an artist collection and you see most of the paintings are in one frame, then if that suits your home, then that's definitely one to go for. I've had clients say that doesn't suit my home, but I'll take that frame and pay for a second frame. Yes. It will suit my home, and then they can store that other frame just in case they ever did want to resell. But you shouldn't really buy a painting considering the resale, really. And like you say, you should buy a painting so you love it, and maybe you rotate in your home, maybe pass it down to children in different ways. But with paintings, I would always buy them with a view to keeping them and holding them.
I agree. And also just on that note of maintenance, otherwise, keeping your artwork in a not overly hot or not overly cold home will massively help with the longevity of that painting. Obviously, they are mostly made from natural materials or materials that are requiring, a little bit of breathing space as well. So you want to make sure that you're doing the best in terms of the air temperature within your home. And we do try and say avoid sunlight where possible or extreme heat. Obviously, if it's hung above a radiator, potentially you can get shelves, radiators, just to stop that flow of air directly upwards. So just be smart about it and think, what are the natural things that could come into contact with my painting or my sculpture, because they can have a negative impact on that artwork.
Yeah, I think sunlight can be devastating with artwork. So again, we can get specialist UV glass, perspex. You can get obviously a varnish on an oil painting or an acrylic painting. Will give you some protection from UV as well. But I'll try. You can even get special UV films you put on your windows to stop the UV from coming in. So you can stop it that way. So by all means, in a normally lit room, you should be fine. But if the sunlight is directly hitting that artwork for a period of time, it's probably in the wrong place. And radiators, the shelves with radiators are very good, but sometimes clients should turn that radiator down. Keep if you keep the radiator low, that's fine. It's obviously very, very, from extremes really of cold and heat, that just isn't very good for your artwork.
It can cause warping if it's canvas and all sorts. So you do have to think about it. There is an upkeep element to them.
And every now and again, just check your artwork. Just go over, have a look at the frame, have a look from the side to make sure it's not bowing. That can make a big difference. You catch a problem before it becomes a major problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So tip number 7, build a relationship with your gallery. So building a relationship with a team member at an art gallery, I think, is super valuable because they can be your guide to the art world. Particularly, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people I think are very self-conscious about not knowing too much, but really we want to know about you. What we care about as a gallery is about, where do you want your artwork? How do you live your life? What's important to you? Do you have kids, as we talked about? What's the goal? What's the purpose? And hopefully with that information, we can steer you towards, with your budget in mind, the perfect artwork for that perfect space that you happen to be looking at. And it's up to you. Some people want to fill their art, do it all in one go. Some people like to do it over a long period of time and really consider and really enjoy that process. But building that relationship means that you can often also, if you've got a particular criteria or brief, hopefully, if you've got a good art consultant, sometimes you'll have access to artworks before they've even hit the market. So they will note down your details and be like, right, this painting's coming in, it's fresh from the studio, or paint hasn't even dried yet, I'm going to let you know about it. And so often you will find that you will get access to things that you may not have done had you built that relationship. So that is a real gold dust tip, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Again, with the gallery, you get good art consultants, you get less good art consultants, but I think most galleries that have been established for a long period of time have a reputation, and that's the most important thing to them. So they're not just going to try and say whatever they can as quickly as possible. So although obviously there are exceptions to it, but find a reputable gallery that's been there a long time, build up a relationship, learn that, get that trust with the art consultant, and certainly it'll pay off in your collection, what you get offered, and the way it's all part of the journey of buying art, isn't it?
Absolutely. And also, if you found something else that you love somewhere else other than your preferred gallery, ask the gallery if they can get it, because it might not be on their website or on their gallery walls, but art galleries are usually pretty well connected, and so chances are that they may be able to help you get it or be able to broker a deal as well. So that's also it. So having your kind of almost personal art consultant is super valuable.
Yeah, I've had calls from clients of mine literally on holiday, just phone me up saying, "Can you get me this painting I've just seen in an art gallery?" Yeah. It's fantastic. They come to you, and then obviously Wyecliffe have dealt with the gallery where they saw the artwork, and we've arranged to get it shipped over, and we will go that extra mile to make sure that a client of ours builds their collection in the right way, and they get the right art to them. It's another thing as well. I mean, a good art consultant faced with a client saying, "Oh, what do you think of this?" We need to look at your collection, your home, and they need to be honest. It's not just about selling paintings, it's about building the right collection. And at Wyecliffe, we realised very, very early on that if we sold one painting to each person that came in, we wouldn't be a successful gallery. You need to get those people that come in the gallery to build their collection with you and build that relationship with you. And that's why we're still here so many years later. So if an art consultant says to you, "I'm not sure this is right for you," then that's actually a positive sign for the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. So tip number 8, prioritise what matters to you. So obviously with our previous tips, we've talked about kind of locations in the home and how that artwork is going to be viewed in the home and how it's going to be lit in the home. But prioritising what matters to you is the idea of thinking, do I just want a piece of artwork by a particular artist because they are a known brand or name, a household name perhaps? Or am I less fussed about that? And I would actually prefer just to get a painting by an emerging artist, or a no-name artist. Maybe they don't necessarily need to have a name. So it's understanding what motivates you to purchase the artwork. So it might be that you love talking about the artist that you've particularly purchased over your dinner table, and people are going to get kind of like that kick out of people having heard of them. Other people don't really mind. They're not really that precious about it one way or the other. And so I think understanding what drives you as a collector is particularly important as well when you're considering all of these other bits in the mix.
I think it's a really valid point, this one. And there's often a compromise to be made. It's just like when you buy a property, like, I want this location, it has to have a driveway, it has to have a garage, it has to be this. You might end up seeing, generally you have to compromise on something to get everything that you want. But everybody's different, everybody buys different. I've had clients that say, I want to buy an artist that nobody else has. I don't want to buy anyone that's popular. I want to buy something I like, but I want to be one of a few people to have it. Other people want to buy what's most popular. It gives them a better resale, obviously more people buying and selling. And we get people that, we get certain artists that paint a very similar style over and over again, which is fine. So we get landscape artists that just paint landscapes and they can look very similar to each other. Some clients love that. They love the style and they love all the words. Other clients say, no, that's not unique enough for me. So yeah, prioritise what you want on your own wall. And you can go into a gallery with a brief of what you want, but understand that you might need to compromise. Unless you've got very, very deep pockets, finding exactly the right kind of art, there's normally a compromise. So know what's most important to you, and that will explain that to the art consultant, and that will really help them work with you.
So tip number 9. So this is a bit of a dual tip, which is check the authenticity and also do your research. So working particularly with a gallery, obviously we're talking from the gallery point of view because that's what we are. Obviously there are many different ways that you can check your authenticity, but buying through a reputable gallery obviously means that you know that you're buying the real deal, because we are a primary market gallery. So all of these artworks that we're surrounded by have come from the source. They've come directly from the artist. If you're deciding to buy secondary, that particular tip is all the more vital, I would say. you should be able to have the sales history of that artwork. With ourselves, obviously, because it's coming straight from ourselves, there is no sales history. You are buying, you are the primary buyer. But if you are buying on the secondary market, you need to check how many times that artwork has exchanged hands, and there should be the receipts and the dockets that come with it. There should be the certificate of authenticity, which is supplied. That can be either the gallery certificate, or it can be an artist provided certificate, but there should be some certificate of authenticity. Particularly if it's a limited edition, you should be very clearly able to see the limited edition number, both on the artwork itself and the certificate. So you need to be looking at those things really quite carefully. And obviously, so the onus is on you as an individual to also do your research around the artists, have a look around, see what else that they're selling, how long have they been selling for, are they brand new to the market, is this their first foray in, or have they been going for 20 years? So just understanding their position within the art market will also help you with the authenticity too.
Yeah, buying from galleries, obviously the disreputable galleries, they do exist. You hear about them. They close down. It's simple as that. So if you find a gallery that's been there for a long number of years, generally they're a good gallery. But you can look at reviews online. You can look at things like Trustpilot and places like that to get an idea of who buys there, which artists sell to them. So buying a gallery is definitely a lot safer than buying secondary market. My one tip about buying secondary market is if it seems too good, too low price, too good to be true, it probably is. When it comes to art, there is so much forgery, so many fakes. You'll be so cautious buying secondary market. So buy from a reputable gallery. It's been there for many years. And if you do buy secondary market, do the things that you've suggested, and also follow your gut as well when you buy these things. Particularly if you're interacting with a seller and it just doesn't feel right, just walk away.
I agree on that front. I years ago now actually, but and I guess there have been times more recently where we've had the requests for Andy Warhols and Mark Scholes and Dalis, and it is a bit of a minefield because prior to some of those artists like passing, I know particularly in Salvador Dali's case, a lot of them there were a load of prints that were printed before his death that were never signed, and so you've got people signing them post-death. You don't even know if the signature is real. That is a real minefield, I would say, because there's such an appetite for that kind of 20th century art. Who doesn't want a Salvador Dali? So you really have to understand, you need to go back to the catalogue raisonnées, and you need to make sure that the piece that you've got in front of you has all the authenticity and matches what is in that catalogue raisonné. If it's not there, then it's not right.
Don't do it.
So yeah, it's really, really important on that one.
And quality as well. I mean, we've been offered condition. We've been offered so many slightly faded Warhols, and the values are so low.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, and of course the person trying to sell it is showing you the highest value possible. It's like buying an old vintage Ferrari. It's the mileage, it's the spec, it's what mods have been made to it. It's all so important, and it affects the price massively. So I would say if you were looking at buying at a high level, 100% you have to go for a gallery, and a gallery that's been specialising in that style of art for a long time. Someone that understands what they're selling and what they're doing. Don't fall for the whole eBay trick of I found this Lowry in my nan's loft. I don't know if it's real or not, but it's only 400 quid. It's not. It's not real.
Yeah. Oh my god. I remember. Actually, I'm going off on a very slight tangent here, but I remember I sold an original Picasso sketch, really beautiful thing. I think it was about 25 grand. And I remember I was working with a dealer at the time to negotiate the sale, and it was a stunning little thing. But actually, the thing that was being protected almost as much as the artwork was the certificate of authenticity. That was the thing that was in the safe. Because if you do not have that bit of paper that authenticates that was actually authenticated by his daughter post his passing, but that served as the authenticity. But if you didn't have that actual drawing was worth nothing. So that authenticity certificate is really everything. So when you're purchasing from ourselves, as an example, you will be given a certificate of authenticity. Make sure you keep that safe, because if you ever do think about reselling in the future, you have to have that. There's an original, that's the original copy of the cert. You need to keep that safe, keep it somewhere where you know where it is, and it can't be lost.
Yeah, that's very, very good advice.
Great. So number 10, don't just buy for investment. So I kind of want to kick off with you on this one, because I feel like you will probably have a lot to say on this.
I mean, some clients do just buy for investment, but obviously this is tips and tricks, and generally we're talking about people beginning the collection here. And yeah, I would 100% avoid saying I want to begin an art collection and I definitely want to make loads and loads of money on my art. It's very easy to buy art. It's much more complicated to sell art. So I would say, as point one is, start with what you love. It's always good to ask about the investment, find out, we have leading artists that have a certain piece in their collection that seems to catch people's imagination. And 10 years later, it's worth 10 times, 20 times what it originally was. Other pieces in the art just as good, that didn't catch the same collection, have maybe increased by 10, 15, 20%. So difficult to judge the way art's going to go. And if you just try and buy purely for investment, I think you could get stuck with artwork that you don't love, maybe even you don't like, and it's not worth what the gallery told you it would have been in the future.
Exactly. It's a really, really important thing that I think that there is this kind of like shroud around art that you will buy anything that will become an investable item. And we're very clear, as you mentioned already, about sales data, looking at kind of like, how can you track the prices going up? And that's usually actually a really positive thing, because it means that the artist demand is there, and their art is exchanging hand for more money. But at the same time, I mean, when you think about some of these blue chip artists, we've talked about Picasso, Andy Warhol, it's taken decades, hundreds of years in cases for those artworks to accrue that level of value, because now there is a finite amount, because obviously that artist is no longer with us. We're all dealing at the moment with artists that are thankfully still with us, but their story isn't complete yet, and we don't know where their careers are going to go. Now, obviously, if we do our job right, the artworks will be more valuable in the future. That's what we always strive for. But as you've said, some artists actually don't want to put their prices up. They just really like painting, and they'd rather have the flow of painting because they're quite prolific. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great for the collector, because it means that they're buying a really accessible painting. But at the same time, like, do not make the mistake of thinking it's, as you said, kind of easy to sell an artwork on the secondary, and just because you bought an original painting, that is going to be worth something on a resale level, because it's going to take some time for that to build up. But that is why we do what we do. Obviously, we do lots of great projects and shows with our artists in the hope that we are creating that valuable market for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's, if you want to invest money, look at pensions, look at investment ISAs. There are ways to do it which are far, far more secure in the art market. However, if you love art and you want to fill your home with art and fill your life with culture and pass that feeling on to your friends and your children, buy art. And, we have, you might spend thousands of pounds on a corner sofa suite for your house and 4 years later throw it away, just like you say with the TV. Art at least will have, hopefully, a strong base value. Buy art, and hopefully it will, if it's good and the artist continues to do well, it will have a resale value. You won't lose like you will with a sofa or something like that. But buy it just because you love it. I think that's number one, and be pleasantly surprised to find that it's accrued money when you want to sell it. And a lot of these people that buy art for investment, they're highly experienced, highly specialised in what they're doing. Same with buying art, buying wine for investment. There's a lot of people doing that to make a return. But of course, with wine, you don't get to drink it. With art, you get to hang on the wall, enjoy it, and it enriches your life.
Right, so we've got tip number 11, avoid being swayed by others. Trust your own taste. I feel like that one's pretty self-explanatory, but I will give a personal anecdote on that one, where I remember a few years ago, I was dealing with a lovely lady. I went over to her house, and she had picked a beautiful array of artworks, but she had honed in on this one, and she was absolutely besotted with this painting. She purchased it, went up on a wall, she loved it. Then her friends came over at the weekend. They kind of went, "Oh, what's that?" And I had a call on Monday morning saying, "Would I take the painting back?" I was like, "What's happened?" And she said, "My friends didn't like it." And in my head, I just thought, your friends aren't the ones that are going to be living with that painting. You are. So you have to stand by and know your own taste, because nobody else but you and your immediate family who live in that property with you are the ones that really should have an opinion on that. Anybody else, as far as I'm concerned, can, go swing.
I've had a very similar story where the client rang up and said, my gardener says it's too big for the wall. And it's like, okay, but you're happy with the scale. Yeah, I'm happy, but he's sure it's too big for the wall. If you ask enough people their opinion, you'll find someone who doesn't like it. You'll never find a piece of art that everybody. That's the beauty about art. Art is that's the main reason people buy art. It's you're not going to get everybody enjoy your painting. So the best thing you can do is just not to ask. Just put it on the wall. You love it. If people come around, they mention they love it, don't love it, then it's up to them. But it's what you get out of it personally. Have confidence in your own selection.
Completely own your decision. So tip number 12, I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, which is rotate your collection, which is something that I always say to my collectors, because obviously over a period of time, if you've been collecting for a while, you're probably going to run out of wall space unless you move home or if you build an extension. And rotating your art is such a clever way to maximise your collection, particularly when you take into consideration like the seasonal light in your home and the different moods of each of the areas of your home. If you've got a relatively neutral backdrop, this is very easy to achieve. It sounds like hard work, but it's not. Just lift the paintings up and try them in different locations. I do this personally. It makes a massive difference because very suddenly you feel like you've got an entirely new collection from the paintings that you already own. You can store, as long as they're stored in, a temperature controlled environment, you can take things down, pack them up, store them, bring them back out in 6 months' time again. People don't do this enough, in my opinion. I think they think once they bought a painting, that painting should stay there forever. And I think that that's not the right way to look at art. In the same way, for me, it's a living, breathing entity. Keep it fluid. You'll get more out of the artwork.
When I first bought the house I'm in now, the people before that lived in the house before us, they had a huge art collection, and everywhere was a hanging system, hidden rails at the top. And they'd move their art around, hang them on. It was a fantastic system. So I've been able to use that in many of the locations in my house. So don't be scared of moving things around, storing artwork, bringing it back. Some clients have certain art collection for, the more wintry periods, different art collection for the summer, something a bit lighter, a bit fresher. That's fine. I'd say when you're getting the artworks installed, if you plan on rotating and moving them, swapping them over, mention that to the installer, because they can install them with screws closer in. So of course, when you switch artworks, they're all not necessarily exactly the same size. So mention that when you get them installed, or install a hanging system, like I mentioned earlier. They really do work. And the rails and the cables, you don't really notice them, and your art just hangs perfectly, and you can switch around all the time. So definitely look at that as an option, particularly when you start to run out of space. I
think that's a great tip for sure. And our final tip, number 13, lucky number 13, take advantage of gallery events. So I think that this is something, obviously we have a separate podcast entirely dedicated to exhibitions, but I do think that actually going to an exhibition, if you get the chance to meet the artist, that is something that will help you get a steer on your collection. And it will also immerse you in that particular artist's world, because you'll get a really broad view of kind of like an entire body and collection of work. So you'll see the best from them, I would say. So I think that events are a great opportunity for you to kind of get to grips with that artist. If you particularly honed in on somebody, let's say Becky Smith, come to a Becky Smith show, get to meet her, look around, and you will really understand which of her works you're drawn to.
That's so true. And I've mentioned this before in different podcasts, but when you meet Kerry Darlington, you chat to her about why she paints and how she paints, and you go and see where she lives. There's beautiful woods and beaches, and you really get inside the mind of the artist, and you see her artwork differently. It's a bit like following a band, a singer. When you start reading about the singer, what's that song about? You might love the song, but when you actually start looking at the lyrics, what the song's about. And that's what a gallery exhibition does. If the artist is there, it allows you to have that conversation with the artist on a much more personal level, and you'll be so much more rewarded by their artwork when you know why and how it's produced.
I agree. So those are our 13 top tips and common mistakes to avoid when it comes to collecting artwork. If you feel like we've missed any top tips, feel free to pop them in the comments box, or if you have any of your own anecdotes that you want to share with us, that we'd absolutely love to hear them. And we hope that you will follow along for our next podcast, which should be next month, all things being well.
Yeah, hopefully. And you can always find us at wyecliffe.com or pop into the gallery on Weybridge.
Yeah, love to see you.
Brilliant. Thank you.